I knew my relationship was over while I was holding a plate of burnt hot dogs. It was at a friend's barbecue a few weeks back. I was standing by the grill trying to save the last of the sausages when I heard my girlfriend's laugh from the patio table behind me. It was that high-pitched performing laugh she does when she wants to be the center of attention. Our friends were all there, the ones who always looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that came with the apartment. I heard my name, so I stopped scraping the grill and listened. "Seriously, Daniel gets me flowers for no reason," Jenna was saying. "He brought me soup last week when I had a cold. My male best friend treats me better than he ever will." She was talking about me, that he was me. Then came the wave of laughter from her friends. It wasn't just a chuckle. It was that mean, dismissive kind of laugh that says, "We all know, and we all agree." I didn't turn around. I didn't drop the tongs. I just stood there looking at the sad, blackened hot dogs, and a strange sort of calm settled over me. I even smiled a little. For months, I'd been the bad guy for being uncomfortable with Daniel. He was her male best friend, and any issue I had with their weirdly intense friendship was just me being a jealous, controlling boyfriend. Hearing her say that, hearing them laugh, it was clarifying. It was like finally getting a clear diagnosis. After months of feeling sick, the problem wasn't my jealousy. The problem was that I was in a competition I didn't even know I was signed up for. And my opponent was the guy she spent half her time with. I took a breath, put the last of the edible food on the platter, and turned around with a perfectly normal smile on my face. I walked over to the table, set the plate down, and looked right at Jenna. "Daniel sounds like a great guy," I said, my voice completely even. The laughter at the table died instantly. Her friends looked at each other, then at her. Jenna's face flushed, but she recovered quickly. "He is," she said a little too defensively. "He's a good friend." "I know," I said, grabbing a bottle of water. "I think I've been a little insecure about it. You guys have a special connection. I shouldn't get in the way of that." The look on her face was a mixture of shock and triumph. She thought she had won. She thought I had finally surrendered, finally accepted my secondary role in her life. She had no idea that I wasn't surrendering. I was agreeing to the terms of a war she had just publicly declared, and I had no intention of losing. For the next few weeks, I became the most supportive boyfriend in the world. I encouraged her to hang out with Daniel. When she'd say they were going out for dinner, instead of getting quiet, I'd say, "Awesome. You guys have fun. Tell him I say hi." When he'd text her in the middle of our movie night, I'd pause the movie and say, "You should get that." It might be important. I was laying the groundwork. I knew Daniel. I'd seen the way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching. He wasn't a friend. He was a vulture circling, waiting for an opportunity. Jenna loved the attention, but she also loved the safety of having me, the stable boyfriend, paying half the bills. She wanted the validation from Daniel without any of the risk. My plan was simple. I was going to give him the opportunity he'd been waiting for. I was going to remove the risk, and I was going to make sure that when he finally made his move, everyone was watching. Our friend group has a big annual Halloween party. It's the biggest event of our social year. It was the perfect stage. I just had to set it. Update 1. It's been about a month since the barbecue, and things have escalated. In the exact way I predicted. My new attitude of being the cool, understanding boyfriend worked better than I could have imagined. It was like giving a kid a tea to the candy store. Jenna completely dropped her guard. Daniel went from being a frequent visitor to a permanent fixture in our lives. He'd be at our apartment when I got home from work, sitting on my couch, eating my food. Jenna would explain it away. Daniel had a rough day, so I told him to come hang out. Or Daniel was in the neighborhood and brought us that new coffee. It was always us, but he was never there for me. I played my part. I'd shake his hand, ask him how he was doing, and then retreat to my office to get some work done. From there, I could hear them laughing, their inside jokes, the way she'd playfully hit his arm. It was a performance, and I was giving them the space to rehearse. The financial side of things got interesting too. Daniel was always buying her things, small, thoughtful gifts, a book from her favorite author, a new flavor of tea she'd mentioned wanting to try. Jenna would show them to me, almost as if to prove a point. "Isn't he the sweetest?" she'd say. I realized she was using his small gestures to justify her own dissatisfaction. He bought her a $10 book. I paid the $700, half of the rent. But in her mind, the book was more valuable because it was thoughtful. So I started my own documentation. I created a spreadsheet. In one column, I listed every financial contribution I made to our shared life. Rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, vacation savings. In another column, I listed Daniel's contributions. One book, a bag of coffee, soup. The numbers were clarifying. The Halloween party was approaching, and I started laying the final pieces of the trap. I knew Daniel's weakness was his ego, especially when he drank. He loved to be the center of attention, the charming guy who could win over any woman. A week before the party, I casually brought up costumes. Jenna said she didn't know what to be. I suggested something that would require a partner. "You and I could go as a famous couple," I said, knowing exactly what her response would be. She hesitated. "Actually, Daniel and I had this hilarious idea to go as an angel and a devil. It's just a joke." Instead of getting upset, I leaned into it. "That's brilliant," I said with a fake laugh. "You guys would kill that. I'll just go as a vampire or something. It's no big deal." She was so relieved. She thought she had expertly navigated a potentially tricky situation. In reality, I had just handed her the rope. An angel and a devil. Perfect. It put them together as a unit for the entire night. The day of the party, I did something that felt a little devious, but necessary. I knew the hosts, Sarah and Tom, very well. I texted Tom and told him I was planning on proposing to Jenna at the party. I told him it was a huge secret and that I wanted it to be a surprise for everyone. I asked if he could help me out by making sure their friend, a guy who was a semi-professional photographer, was around our group later in the evening to capture the moment. Tom was ecstatic. He promised to be discreet and to have the photographer ready. Of course, there was no ring. There was no proposal, but there would be a photographer and there would be a moment to capture. That night, we went to the party. Jenna was the angel in a white dress with a halo. Daniel was the devil, complete with horns and a pitchfork. They looked like a matching set. I was a generic vampire, which felt fitting. I was there to drain the life out of their little parade. I spent the first hour of the party being the perfect detached boyfriend. I got Jenna drinks. I complimented her costume. And then I let her go, like letting a dog off a leash. She immediately gravitated to Daniel, and they started working the room together. My job was simple. Every time I saw Daniel's drink getting low, I'd find a way to get him another one. I'd bring a round of shots for the group. I'd catch him on his way back from the bar and hand him a beer. "Dude, you're not drinking fast enough," I'd say with a laugh. He loved it. He thought we were buddies. By 11 p.m., he was exactly where I needed him to be. Loud, overconfident, and sloppy. Jenna was laughing at everything he said, completely oblivious to the line he was about to cross. I saw Tom give me a subtle nod from across the room. The photographer was in position, pretending to take candid shots of the party. I made my move. I walked over to a group of our mutual friends, the ones who had been at the barbecue, and started a conversation, intentionally turning my back to Jenna and Daniel, but keeping them in my peripheral vision. I was creating the illusion that I wasn't paying attention. I was giving him the green light. I saw him leaning close to her, his hand on her back. She was still smiling, thinking he was just being his usual flirty but harmless self. He whispered something in her ear. Her smile faltered for just a second, and then he went for it. He leaned in and tried to kiss her. It wasn't a small peck. It was a full, sloppy, drunken attempt. And it happened right in the middle of the crowded living room under the string lights with at least 20 people watching. The photographer's flash went off twice. Update 2. The moment Daniel tried to kiss Jenna, the entire atmosphere of the party shifted. It was like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. She shoved him back hard. Her angel face was a mask of pure horror and humiliation. Daniel stumbled backward, looking confused, like a dog that had just been smacked for jumping on the furniture. The chatter died down. Everyone saw it. The group of friends who had laughed at the barbecue were now staring, mouths open. The photographer, bless his heart, just kept snapping pictures, thinking he was capturing some high drama before the proposal. Jenna's eyes scanned the room looking for me. She found me standing with my back to her, and the look on her face changed. From horror to pure rage. She thought I had missed it. She thought I had left her vulnerable. She stormed over to me, grabbing my arm. "Did you see that?" she hissed. I turned around slowly, finding confusion. See what I was talking to Mike? Daniel? He just tried to kiss me in front of everyone. I looked over at Daniel, who was now being awkwardly led away by one of his friends. I looked back at Jenna. Wow, that's crazy. Is he drunk? Of course, he's drunk. You were supposed to be with me. Where were you? This was the moment I had been waiting for. I kept my voice low, but clear enough for the people around us to hear. I was giving you space. You've been with him all night. I didn't want to be the jealous boyfriend. Her face crumpled. She had no comeback. She couldn't argue with the very logic she'd been using against me for months. She tried to drag me out of the party, but I stood my ground. I'm not leaving, I said calmly. Tom and Sarah are my friends, and now I'm not going to let this ruin their party. She stared at me in disbelief, then turned and fled the party alone. I stayed for another hour, making a point to talk to everyone, acting completely normal. People kept coming up to me, asking if I was okay. I just shrugged and said, "Looks like Jenna has some stuff to figure out with her friend." I was no longer the jealous boyfriend. I was the wrong victim. The narrative had flipped, and I didn't have to say a word. The drive home was a preview of the storm to come. My phone was blowing up with texts from her, a mix of apologies for Daniel's behavior, and accusations against me for abandoning her. I didn't read them. When I walked into our apartment, she was sitting on the couch in the dark, still in her angel costume, halo askew. She jumped up as soon as I walked in. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay," I replied, turning on the light. "Let's talk." She launched into a tirade. It was all Daniel's fault. He was a disgusting pig who took advantage of their friendship. She never gave him any indication she was interested. But then the blame started to shift. It was my fault for not being there. My fault for letting him get so drunk. My fault for being so distant lately. I let her talk until she ran out of steam. I just stood there listening, not interrupting. When she was finally done breathing heavily, I walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up a single piece of mail that had been sitting there. It was the renewal offer for our apartment lease. "I overheard you at the barbecue a month ago," I said. My voice was quiet. "The one where you told your friends that Daniel treats you better than I ever will. The one where they all laughed." The color drained from her face. She looked like she'd been slapped. That was just a joke." She stammered. "It didn't sound like a joke," I said. "It sounded like the truth, so I decided to test it. I gave you everything you thought you wanted. All the space, all the time with him. No jealousy from me. I wanted you to have the full Daniel experience, and now you have. How did that better treatment feel? She was speechless. She just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. The proposal story I told Tom, I continued. Not real, but I needed a photographer. I needed everyone to see what I already knew. That he isn't your friend. He's a guy who wants to get with his friend's girlfriend. And you? You're the girl who loves the attention so much you're willing to humiliate your own boyfriend to get it. I tossed a lease renewal letter on the coffee table in front of her. The lease is up in 60 days. I've already told the landlord I'm not renewing. I've already found a new place for me alone. So, you have 2 months to figure out where you're gonna live. Maybe Daniel has a spare room. You guys seem so close. She finally found her voice. It was a whisper. You planned this. All of it. You planned it. I corrected her. You planned on having a boyfriend to pay the bills and a best friend to give you all the attention you need. You just never planned on the two worlds colliding. Now they have. I walked into our bedroom and closed the door, leaving her standing, alone in the living room with the ruins of her perfect little setup. The silence on the other side of the door was more satisfying than any shouting match could ever be. Final update. The 60 days following the party were a slow, painful, and deeply satisfying unraveling of Jenna's entire world. She went through every stage you could imagine. Denial, anger, bargaining, and finally a pathetic, self-serving depression. For the first week, she tried to pretend like nothing had happened. She'd make coffee in the morning and ask how I slept. She tried to initiate conversations about our day. I shut it down every time with one-word answers. I wasn't being cruel. I was being a gray rock. I gave her nothing to work with. No emotional reaction to feed off of. I slept on the couch. The apartment was a library of silent tension. The social fallout was immediate. The pictures from the party surfaced. The photographer, thinking he was just sharing party pics, posted a few to social media, including a crystal clear shot of Daniel lunging at a horrified Jenna. The story spread like wildfire through our friend group. Daniel became a social pariah overnight. He deactivated his accounts and went completely dark. Jenna lost her #1 source of validation in an instant. Her friends, the ones who had laughed at me, were now in an awkward position. A few of them reached out to me to apologize, saying they had no idea how weird the dynamic with Daniel really was. I accepted their apologies, but kept my distance. They had shown me who they were. Jenna's bargaining phase was the most desperate. She wrote me a long, tearful letter about how she had made a terrible mistake, how she had taken me for granted, how Daniel had manipulated her. She promised to block him, to go to therapy, to do whatever it took to earn back my trust. I read the letter, and then I slid it back under her bedroom door with a sticky note on it that said, "Too little, too late." She realized I was serious about moving out when my new furniture started getting delivered to our apartment. I had ordered a new couch and bed frame, and since I was still on the lease, I had them sent there. Watching her face as 2 delivery guys carried my new sofa into the living room was a moment I will treasure. The reality of the situation was becoming tangible. Her anger peaked about 2 weeks before the move-out date. She cornered me in the kitchen and screamed at me for half an hour. She called me a manipulative monster for setting her up. She said I had ruined her life, that I had destroyed her reputation and her most important friendship. I just waited until she was done and said, "You humiliated me in front of your friends. You entertained another man for months. You broke the trust in this relationship. All I did was hold up a mirror. If you don't like what you see, that's on you. The last week was just sad." She finally accepted that it was over and started half-heartedly packing her things. She couldn't afford the apartment on her own, not even close. She had to ask her parents if she could move back into her childhood bedroom. The same parents she had been bragging to for years about her perfect life in the city. The day I moved out, she was there sitting on a pile of boxes, watching me carry my things to the truck. She looked small and defeated. She asked me one last time if there was any chance for us. "No, Jenna," I said, not unkindly. "There isn't. You made your choice at that barbecue." It just took a while for the consequences to catch up. I've been in my new place for a month now. The peace and quiet are incredible. I've reconnected with my own friends, the ones who were never big fans of Jenna. Life is simpler, better. I heard through the grapevine what happened to her. She's living at her parents' house an hour outside the city. She and Daniel never spoke. Again, her friend group has mostly moved on, tired of her constant drama and victim narrative. She apparently spends most of her time complaining about how one misunderstanding at a party ruined her entire life, never once acknowledging the months of disrespect that led up to it. The best part of this whole thing wasn't the revenge itself. It was the clarity. I didn't have to scream or fight or beg her to see my worth. I just stepped back and gave her the stage she always wanted. She performed her part perfectly. In the end, the audience booed her off it. She wanted to be treated better. Now, she gets to live with the reality of what her better option truly was.